Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman. We're back with our next episode of the 100 Years' War, episode 3, I believe, right? Yep. Because the English have been kicking butt the last 2 episodes, really kicking butt. I figured the French last episode would, they'd bounce back, learn from some mistakes, and, kind of like take over with their numbers, but, definitely wrong. That's definitely not what happened. But this says the French Resurgence. So it makes me feel pretty confident that the French are gonna bounce back. I guess they had to put like spoilers in the title, right? So I wouldn't be wrong again. But yeah, not much really to say. I just mean the numbers game. The French basically thought they, just having more men would win the war. Yeah, as long as they had more men, they'd overwhelm the English, which just didn't happen. The English were more tactical, and they just had the better, they had the better ground. They just, the French just played into what the English wanted them to do, and I kind of sensed it anyway last episode, just because of the leaders, because the Black Prince, was well known, and he seemed to be doing pretty good tactically, just as far as going across the country and burning the land and everything. Yeah, it seemed like he was going against someone who was kind of new to it. Wasn't really impressed, I guess, by a whole lot the French leader at the time was doing. So and that kind of played into what happened. The prince won. But yeah, we're gonna jump into this new episode, the French Resurgence. So here come the French guys. This would be hilarious if I'm wrong, right? Wrong last episode, so I'm 1 for 1. Now, if I'm right about the French this time, then I'm going up by 1, right? That's how it works. Anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button below. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Dun, 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 the 100 Years' War. Woo! Like, subscribe. Kings and Generals, amazing channel. If you're new to my channel, definitely check out them. They got amazing videos when it comes to wars and stuff. And if you're new, definitely check out my playlist, all that fun stuff. So yeah, since I'm gone through all that mumbo jumbo, let's hit play. 3, 2, 1.
At a lavish royal banquet taking place in late May of 1357, Edward III of England was accompanied by 2 of the most prestigious dinner guests in medieval history.
Okay.
On one side of him sat the captured King of Scotland. The other was France's Valois king, Jean II. These priceless hostages were...
So, I guess, if you're of nobility, I guess, a lord or a king or whatnot, and you're captured by, the enemy, the French, the English, or whatever, you're basically still treated like royalty. I mean, you're not put into a dungeon. You're probably just put into like a nice room, and you probably just have guards around you 24/7 so you don't escape, or they're not going to be able to escape because, you just can't leave a castle without probably a guard seeing you. So they probably get treated really, really pretty well there, because obviously they'd want the same to happen to them if they were to get captured. So it's definitely interesting. It's kind of like the movies, right? Where everyone's treated great. You just can't leave, the premises. But anyways, yeah.
Being displayed purposefully as an indicator of just how far the English kingdom of only around 4 million people had come.
Wow.
It had defeated the flower of medieval Europe twice and was now in a position to win the war. Though chaos reigned in the now kingless France, and Edward III believed his complete victory to only be a matter of time, the old land of Charlemagne would start to recover under the capable rule of Charles V. Welcome to our video on the Caroline phase of the 100 Years' War. And if you're looking for more
So Charles V, I guess he's the one taking over now, and you have so many differences, when you change leadership. Some people just have it in them to lead, and others, it's just not in them. They just don't have it in their blood to kind of just do it. And by the sounds of it, I mean, I haven't really heard anything yet. This new guy, they said Charles, seems like he's about to kind of take over things and lead France in the right direction, I'm thinking.
His royal Valois prisoner from France, he also removed the anchor which kept the ship of state afloat.
Well, that makes
As
sense.
military historian John Corrigan stayed afloat, Valois prisoner from France supports our channel.
Sorry, I wanted to.
When the Black Prince removed his Royal Valois prisoner from France, he also removed the anchor which kept the ship of state afloat. As military historian John Corrigan stated in his book A Great and Glorious Adventure, France was effectively in a state of civil war. The 3 years following Poitiers were some of the worst in French history. Rabid discontent with the government spread like a plague among the nobility, and Paris's Third Estate even asserted its authority under the leadership of Etienne Marcel, a cloth merchant. This wasn't the end of it. Demobilized soldiers, deserters and common bandits from England, Gascony, France and even further afield went renegade and formed so-called routiers, or free companies.
Wow.
These bands of armed men roamed and ravaged the lawless countryside almost at will.
So basically, it was like the Wild West right now in France. I mean, you get yourself kind of a group of people together, and you just kind of go take what you want because no one's going to stop you. So the bigger and stronger your posse is, the more you're going to be able to do whatever you want. I guess these posses kind of stay away from each other because they all want the same thing, and why even bother in battle? Interesting.
Bands of armed men roamed and ravaged the lawless countryside almost at will, serving any who would pay them, and sometimes even setting themselves up as robber barons in their own right. They would remain a problem for decades to come. Even in lands where feudal control was maintained, it didn't do France any good. Extortionate ransom payments paid to the English for the swath of high-born prisoners taken at Poitiers prompted a ruthless tax hike, and this finally inflamed the peasants into a revolt. A horrific bloodletting, known as the Jacquerie, began in the Oise Valley, with peasants lynching and murdering any noble they could get their hands on. The uprising lasted for weeks, before Charles of Navarre brutally put it down. Threatened by another large assault by Edward III, the beleaguered Dauphin signed the Treaty of Bretigny in October 1360, giving the Plantagenets all of Aquitaine, Ponthieu and Calais in return for the English king's renunciation of his own claim to the French throne, in addition to a £600,000 ransom for Jean's return. When 2/3 of the ransom had been paid, John II was allowed to return to France.
Okay.
However,
This is crazy. Not crazy, but I'm like, wow. So England is coming out like bandits right now. They're getting like basically what they want. So yeah, something's got to give here.
Had been paid, John II was allowed to return to France. However, one of his imprisoned sons escaped contrary to the agreement, which prompted the French king to voluntarily return to Edward's captivity in exchange for the younger Valois. He finally died there in 1360.
I think someone in the comments said this. I think I read this comment, and I was like, what are you talking about? And now it pops up here. So stay away from spoilers in the comments, guys. So like I said, it's an honor thing. He escaped, and so he had went back. It's just an honor thing, because I guess that's just a thing amongst royals. That's all they have is their honor, right? Kind of thing. Anyways.
Exchange for the younger Valois.
He dies.
He finally died there in 1364 and was succeeded as king by Charles V, whose accession was accompanied by a defeat in Brittany at Auray, which ended the succession war there. To deal with the rampaging Routiers and secure Castile as an ally in one move, the new king gathered a large force of Routiers under a Breton called Bertrand de Guesclin and sent them to install a friendly contender on the Castilian throne in 1365, Henry of Trastamara. The deposed king, Pedro the Cruel, went to the Black Prince, who was now Duke of Aquitaine, for help. Realizing the strategic benefit of having a friendly monarch in Castile, the French gathered an army and marched against Henry, defeating him at Nájera in 1367 and putting Pedro back on the throne.
Wow.
Unfortunately for him, this reign only lasted 2 more years before Henry assassinated his rival and took the crown once again. A Francophile was now firmly on Castile's throne. By the time Edward returned to Bordeaux in the late 1360s, he was growing ill from a disease contracted in Spain, and his direct rule in Aquitaine was creating discontent among long-time English subjects, not only the lands gained at Brittany. To pay for his military campaigns and the court of Bordeaux, Aquitaine's overlord had been imposing harsh taxes for years, but when he declared yet another feuage or hearth tax in 1368, some of the highest feudal lords in the realm revolted, petitioning Charles V for assistance. It was the chance he had been waiting for. Technically, Charles no longer had sovereignty over Aquitaine, but used a loophole in the...
I mean, I guess they did, any monarch, when they raise their taxes, for anything, and they gotta know, like, the feeling of the people, right? Like, if they're close to uprising or not, because, I mean, you're not gonna get nothing if you uprise, and you're just gonna spend money, I guess, trying to defend yourself, and like I said, it just opens you for attack from outsiders. So, because it just seems to happen a lot. Maybe the info, the people next to the ones in power, they just kind of tell them what they want to hear and just say, oh, no, everything's fine. I don't know.
Technically, Charles no longer had sovereignty over Aquitaine, but used a loophole in the Treaty of Brittany as an excuse to receive the discontented nobles and again formally confiscate English possessions in France during late 1369. Despite attempted peace overtures by Edward III, Charles V was eager for revenge, and the war was back on. The French attacked immediately, seizing the thinly defended counties of Ponthieu and Rouergue with new tactics. Smaller mobile contingents of soldiers replaced the large massed armies which had been defeated at Crécy and Poitiers. Charles V also commanded that his generals refuse battle with the English, wary of suffering the bitter defeats of the 1340s and 1350s again. As Aquitaine's unwieldy new borders were being attacked, Edward III's son, John of Gaunt, launched a limited chevauchée in Normandy before withdrawing back to Calais not long after. In the following year, 1370, a notorious captain called Sir Robert Knowles was contracted to lead 4,000 troops to do the same thing. They set out on a devastating raid from Calais, and from there, devastated northern France before approaching Paris. Again, Charles V restrained his knights from meeting the English in open battle, and Knowles's band moved further into France. Realizing he needed a military leader with whom he saw eye to eye, France's Valois king made the pragmatic Breton Rottier, Captain Bertrand de Guesclin, a formidable guerrilla leader who had previously served in Castile, the new constable of France. This new commander quickly made a base at Caen and raised a force to meet Knowles's.
So this is definitely, I guess, different than all the last two episodes because, like I said, you can obviously already, like, the new leaders put a lot more thought into this, and definitely has learned. Well, I guess we still have yet to see this, but he just attacked right away. He just wasn't hastily go into battle. He's gonna wait until he's ready, and yeah, I mean he's basically hired someone, but someone to lead, I guess, the army. Someone with experience and whatnot. Where I guess with this kind of warfare and stuff like that. So yeah, Charles kind of knows that they can't lose this. Like, it could be, really, really devastating. I mean, last ones were pretty devastating, but, like, it's going to be devastating again. You know what I mean? Anyways, we'll see how this guy fares.
This new commander quickly made a base at Caen and raised a force to meet Knowles's 4,000 before marching after the English. Errors in coordination and internal division among the raiding army resulted in disaster in early December 1370, when Guesclin surprised and crushed it at the battles of Point-Vaillant and Var, destroying the chevauchée before it could inflict any real damage on the king's reputation. In the south, French forces under Charles V's brother, the Duke of Anjou, continued the English disaster by capturing Agenais, Limousin and Bézec. with many local lords defecting from their Plantagenet overlords and going over to the Valois. The now ailing Black Prince was livid about the treachery of his lords, and reacted violently when the Bishop of Limoges, his own son's godfather, betrayed the town to the French. He marched there, stormed into the city, and brutally sacked it against all chivalric conventions, supposedly not even sparing women and children who begged at his feet. Wow. Sickly and demoralized by the death of his eldest son, the Black Prince went home to England in 1371, a tired man, leaving John of Gaunt in charge of Aquitaine. After Poitou was wrenched...
And like, already you can, there's just these new faces popping up, like the, what's it called, where they were raiding up here, and in the middle of, like, you know, what the show was say, whatever, I forget what it's called. You know, and then they stopped that up here. I guess someone who was like, seemed like unknown and new to this, and now they got another new guy down here. It doesn't bode well to any kind of combat we're going to see here. You know, these new guys never really tested in battle and whatnot are now probably going to have to go against Charles and his, like, you know, new leader who has a lot of experience in this kind of stuff. So it's definitely looking really good for the French right now if they're about to face off against these newbies, right? Because the Black Prince, if he's down here, man, like, that would have been a big help, you know, for the English. But he's gone. Edward's still in England, so see what happens.
Leaving John of Gaunt in charge of Aquitaine. After Poitou was wrenched away from the Plantagenet crown in 1372, Edward III realised more help was needed, and so he sent the Earl of Pembroke to Aquitaine with 160 soldiers in 20 ships, 3 of which were larger battle-worthy vessels with archery towers on them. As Pembroke was approaching La Rochelle harbour at the height of a coastal inlet, however, he was confronted by a smaller fleet of Castilian combat galleys which were waiting for him to arrive. Castile's ships launched their attack first and came into close quarters with the outnumbering but outmatched English, inflicting a few losses among the non-combat craft.
Wow.
Nevertheless, Pembroke's meagre number of archers managed to do their job incredibly well, laying down a precise rain of arrows on the Iberian ships. At the same time, his spear-wielding men-at-arms managed to bravely fight off boarding attempts by the enemy until dusk, when the fleets separated.
Oh, wow.
Pembroke sailed slightly out to sea and set anchor, while the Castilians waited just off La Rochelle until dawn the next day. The English were nervous. They couldn't escape because the enemy galleys were faster than their own ships, nor could they pass through the treacherous shallow waters of La Rochelle at low tide. However, some Poitevin knights and their retinues did row out to join the English during the night. Pembroke kept his ships anchored, not expecting an enemy attack until high tide. However, the Castilian ships used their shallower draft and closed on the English while they were still immobile, spraying their decks and rigging with oil before lighting the fuel with flaming arrows. This was the end of the battle, in a complete victory for France's Iberian ally.
I can't believe that, man. They're way outnumbered. They don't see the ships coming at them. Was it dark or something? I just figure, when you're out in sea, like, you can basically see people, like, from miles away, ships from miles away, getting closer to you. And they know where the direction these ships are coming from. You'd think they'd be able to see them. And I mean, I guess they could have been coming at night or something like that, where, like, you didn't really see them until they were on top of them. But you think that they would be ready for them. But maybe it's just that your ships are, like, smaller and just more maneuverable, that there's a problem that there might not have been nothing they can do. But wow, man, French kicking butt with these dang ships here.
Many of the English were burned alive, most of their ships were destroyed, and Pembroke himself was taken prisoner. English naval superiority, established at Sluys in 1340, met its end at La Rochelle, and a planned expedition by Edward III himself was cancelled. The next year, John of Gaunt led around 10,000 men out from Calais on the so-called Great Chevauchée, laying waste to a massive swath of land on his march all the way to Bordeaux. Nevertheless, the French did not engage the English in pitched battle. instead harassing John's vulnerable supply lines and picking off any stragglers or raiding columns which strayed too far. This effectively limited the damage, and even though
Yeah, I mean, see, like, obviously the French had definitely improved, and with their tactics and smarting way up, and they just want to harass them to where they just don't want to be there anymore. Like, just guerrilla warfare, just like harassing all those other wars we've seen. Just beat them up little by little. Eventually, they'll give up and want to leave. Probably, right? It's kind of the thing. And or when you do actually decide to take them head on, they'll be weakened.
Which strayed too far. This effectively limited the damage, and even though the chevauchés pulled Valois soldiers away from Aquitaine, by the close of 1373, almost all of the province was under French control. English territory in France had been reduced to its pre-war levels once again.
Wow.
Rather than covering each small-scale military action over the next decade, we'll cover the crucial dynastic politics which begins to affect the course of the war from this point on.
Okay.
In the June of both 1376 and 1377, England suffered a great loss. The bedridden Black Prince, formerly the great model of medieval chivalry, succumbed first, followed the year after by his legendary father, Edward III, who perished after a reign of half a century, widely viewed as a golden age for the Kingdom of England. His successor was Richard II, second son of the Black Prince. Since he was still a minor, however, true authority would be wielded by a regency council until the king came of age. Only days after Richard II's coronation, the boy king's realm was beset by a series of lightning ship-borne raids on its channel ports. From Rye in the east to Plymouth in the west, the French pirates.
I mean, obviously it makes sense. You got the two big names in England, like the two powerhouses, are both gone. I mean, if you're France, it's the time to strike. It just makes sense, man. Get it? What, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. He's not even in charge. It's his, whatever his council's in charge. Which if they're not all on the same page, they're gonna think twice and delay whatever kind of action they're gonna want to take. I don't know. So the French, man, kick them while they're down, man. Go get them. That's what I would do. Probably what anyone would do, right?
Channel ports. From Rye in the east to Plymouth in the west, the French pirates, led by a talented knight and admiral called Jean de Vienne, used their dominance of the sea to viciously plunder and loot. France's political situation also changed when in mid-September 1380, Charles V the Wise, France's Valois monarch who had held his kingdom together in its darkest hour and doggedly led the reconquest of Aquitaine, died of an illness. He left the crown to the 11-year-old Charles VI, also a minor.
This is great, man. We got the two minors against each other. This is going to be great to see how this plays out, man.
This situation gave the king's four uncles, the so-called Princes of Blood, an opportunity to form a regency council as well, the Dukes of Anjou, Berry, Bourbon, and Burgundy. The Duke of Burgundy, Philippe the Bold, was the younger son who was captured with Jean II at Poitiers in 1356, and his dynasty would bring Burgundy to power in the 15th century. Unfortunately for France, the regency also gave the dukes an opportunity to exploit their positions to gain more power, and they squandered the carefully maintained treasury of Charles V. The political situation had changed again in both kingdoms by the late 1380s, as both kings asserted their independent rule. In France, Charles VI embarked on a personal rule, dismissing the Valois magnates from his council in November of 1388, and replacing them with a group of his father's old advisors, known as the Marmosets. His rule started well, and the people began to call their king the Beloved. But on the other side of the English Channel, Richard II's reign descended into a tyranny throughout the last decade of the 14th century. While the king managed to forge a 28-year truce with the French, his internal problems began to get worse. This all came to a climax when John of Gaunt's son, Henry Bolingbroke, was cast out of England for 10 years as a political threat. The former didn't react to his son's exile, but when Gaunt died in 1399, and Richard II both extended his banishment to life and confiscated his vast Duchy of Lancaster, the Rubicon had been crossed. Henry Bolingbroke returned and landed at the Humber estuary in June, and almost immediately most of Richard's nobles deserted him, unnerved by the king's actions. Richard, who had travelled to Ireland to put down a rebellion there, was deposed and died a few months later in prison, while the
Holy crap. My God, like what's going on right now is just insane. I mean, well, Charles, he's in good position. He's the beloved down here. Richard's over here, like, man, I don't know what he's doing up here, but it's the wrong thing. I know Henry, he's just basically on vacation, in France until his dad, I guess, dies, and then he decides to come home, I guess, and take over as king. This is kind of what's going on in England right now, man. They need to get their butt together because Charles is fixing to like build something up here, and if England's not ready, Charles is going to be returning with an army, and England's going to get destroyed, man. This is kind of crazy right now.
There was deposed and died a few months later in prison, while the House of Lancaster became the Royal House of England when its usurping patriarch came to the throne as Henry IV.
Yep.
As the 15th century approached, it seemed as though internal strife in England and wise rule in France would set the tone for another generation. However, a single figure would turn that state of affairs on its head and reignite the English war effort, Henry V. Our story of the 100 Years' War will continue soon, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell.
It's done. I don't know who... Because I've heard of, because all the same names get used over and over again, and so I recognize the names, but I don't know which one it is, and so I try to always remember which is the one I'm thinking of now, and I can't remember. It's like Henry V, like I'm supposed to know this, like which Henry that is. I don't know. Against Charles, so I don't know what to expect now. I really don't. I mean, Charles is in a better situation. I mean, his country is a lot better off with him, and they're happy with him. And in England, things are still kind of up in the air of really what's going on, and the land, the people are still like not happy. So I don't know what to expect next episode. I mean, I guess I can read the title, right? All right, we're on the Resurgence. Then we're gonna battle Agincourt. Where is that? Where's I don't know. I guess I'd have to pull the map. But anyways, that doesn't really tell me anything, except for this is like some time later now. But anyways, guys, hit that like and subscribe, and I hope you liked this episode. Basically, this episode was all France. I mean, France kicked butt. I mean, there was a little bit against them, basically from their own, they probably kicked them. They kicked themselves, as far as when the young kings were in power, the people around them just kind of took advantage of the situation, looted, got money for themselves and whatnot. But other than that, it was kind of all good for France this episode, and totally opposite for England. They just couldn't get going, especially like the naval thing. I mean, like I always think of England as a big naval power. I guess in this time period they weren't really that big naval power. I guess they end up becoming. But I was definitely surprised that France kicked their butts there, so that was definitely very interesting and surprising. So very cool stuff. Very impressed, and I don't know what to expect. Usually I okay, someone's going to bounce back. Well, I guess now I'm kind of France is in a better situation, so I'm kind of expecting them to, do better next episode. But then again, like you'll time jump 20 years or something like that, and then it's a totally different scenario by then, because England will settle down and get their act together within whatever time period the next battle is or whatnot. I don't know. I'm just carrying on. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment below your thoughts and all that good stuff. Have a great day, great night, and we'll see you next time with the continuation of the 100 Years' War. Good stuff. I like this war.